This is our 6th lesson, I believe, on arrays in Java, and we're going to be covering what are arrays and what do we use them for. So arrays. An array is a collection of data. It's used to hold multiple related values at the same time in one collection. So it's kind of like a list of different pieces of data. So an array is an object that holds a fixed number of values of a single type. So you can only have like strings in it, or you can only have numbers in it. You can't combine those two. Also, you cannot change the size of an array, so you can't change the number of things inside of it once you define it. So you can have an array of type integer, of type double, of type string, etc. You just can't combine them. And if it helps you, you can visualize an array as a table. So like a little table down here. And each of those little boxes is like a piece of data in the array, like a piece of text or a number. So does everyone understand this? Are there any questions just about very basic introduction to arrays? Thumbs up, that's good. Okay, everyone looks good. So let's keep going. So index. So to access things in an array, you need to use their index. And an index is just like the number that represents the position of an item in the array. So each element of an array, each item in it, has an index number depending on where it is in the array. And so you can keep track of the specific element and you can like reference it and use it in your code. A very important thing in most programming languages, and especially in Java, is that you start counting at index number 0. So the first item in an array, it does not have an index number of 1. It has an index number of 0. So in this example down here, we have an array of numbers, and it starts at 7, and we have 11, 6, 55, etc. However, the index number, so like the index number of the first element is 0 and not 1. So if you want to get the number 7 or the first item in this array, you would have to use 0. So the number is 0. And then the second item is number 1, third item is number 2, and so on until the end of your array. How to create an array now, important. So this is like your just basic way of creating an array, and this doesn't put anything in it. This just makes like you remember on a couple of slides, there was like this blank one. So you're just gonna make like that blank row of possible elements. So you start with saying the data type. So in this case, we're making an array of integers. So you put int, and then you put 2 square brackets, and then you put the name of the array, in this case, array 1, and then that equals a new, we put the data type again, so int, and then put the square brackets again, except this time in the square brackets, you're putting the size of the array. So if you want there to be 5 elements in your array, and you can't change this, so I guess be careful with that, you just put a number 5 there. And so now after this step, only after that can you actually start putting numbers into your array, and you can put up to 5 numbers in here. There is, however, another way you can make an array, and this is usually a little easier, but it depends on what you want to do with it. But in this case, you're actually putting the numbers in it from the start. So you start, of course, with the data type and your square brackets, the name of the array, array 1, equals new data type again, square brackets. And then after that, on the same line, you have curly brackets, and then inside you put all of the elements in the array. So in this case, the first element located at index 0 would be 1, and the second element located at index 1 would be 2. So this way you can actually put everything in an array from the start, and you kind of automatically tell it how big it is. So there's 5 numbers, so it's obviously going to have a fixed size of 5 that you can't change. So in our next slide here, you can see you're printing out. You have to put semicolons at the end as well. So let's continue. Now that we know how to make an array, we can learn how to get things from an array and print them out. So to access an element in an array, you can use this index in brackets. And you can print just using system.out.print. So to get an item in an array, you would use its name. So you can see it in pink, array 1 or 2, and then you put 2 square brackets, and then inside the square brackets, you put the index number. So if you want to get the first element of an array, you would put a 0 in there, and that would print the element at index 0. And then if you want to print an element at index 3, you would put a 3, and that is the 4th item. So the 0 thing might be a little confusing, but yeah, I'll set the demo link right now. Sorry about that. So there's a demo to explain this concept a little better. That is a demo. Make sure you fork the demo before editing it. All right, so in this demo, we just have a little scanner to get user input. And then we have an array right here. So this is an array of movies. It's a string array. So string movies equals new string, excuse me, and then you can see the curly bracket way of making an array. So there's curly brackets, and then it just lists off each item, and each item has like a comma in between just so you can separate them. And so this has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 movies. And then actually I'm gonna fork this as well, just so I can play around with it on my own. So, and then it asks, which movie should you watch today? Pick a number from between 1 and 5. And then based on that number, it prints a movie for you. Make sure to subtract 1 because arrays always start at the index of 0. So here is how you're getting an item from the array. And as you can see, the index number that you're using in between the square brackets takes away 1 from what you input. Because if you want to watch the first movie, you would normally put in 1, right? But to get the first element of an array, it's at index 0. So you have to be taking away 1. And so you can just type in a number, and it gives you the 4th item in the array. 1, 2, 3, 4 is Sonic the Hedgehog. This is a really cute demo. Yeah, so make sure when you're getting an item from an array, you're using the square brackets and then putting your number inside of them. Okay, so now that we know how to get an item from an array and print it out, we can also talk about the length of an array. So you can find the length of an array, or the number of elements in an array, the number of things in it. And you can get that using array.length. So array being just the name of your array, and then .length. So if you want to put that in integer, you can just go int length equals array1.length. So array1 being your array. And you have to be aware that length is not the same as index. So have an array with 6 elements, like the one in our example here. The last index number is 5 because you started 0 and you got up to 5. And if you forget this, you can get a little error. So in our little array down here, index the first item has an index of 0, and the 6th item has an index of 5. So an important concept, that's what we saw in the last demo, making sure that you know the difference between its index number and its like position in the array. Because like the position can be the first item, but its index is 0 pretty much. Hope everyone's doing okay. If you want to print an entire array, so go through every single item in an array, and also I'll show you the demo, you can use a for loop. So you just get this, where is it? You just get the demo right here and send it to everyone. If I can get the chat, there you go. So make sure you fork the demo. Let's open it up. Fork it. So because there's no built-in way to print an array, you have to iterate through every item in your array and print them out. So in our example here, we make an empty array, sorry, of strings. String fruits equals new string 5. So that makes a string array with 5 that can have 5 elements in it. The first element is grapes, apple, banana, strawberry, orange, etc. And then down here you have a for loop to print out everything. So the for loop, if you remember for loops, you start at 0 because I is 0. I is less than fruits.length. So fruits.length is 5. So I only goes up to 4 because once it hits 5, 5 is no longer less than 5. And then it increments by 1 each time. And then you can print out fruits I. So it started at 0 and it will print out grapes, and then apple, banana, strawberry, orange. And then when I would get to 5, it would stop. So you can just run that and you can see how it prints out all of the fruit. At the end it says, hope you found something you liked. If not, how would you add another fruit? Also, I++, so someone asked, what does I++ mean? That just means add 1. So you can change I++ to plus equals 1. It's just a shorthand way of adding 1 to I. Okay, so at the bottom it says, if not, how would you add another fruit? So let's say you wanted to add like a lemon to this array. Does anyone have any possible guesses about how you would add another item to the array, a 6th item? I'll give you a hint. You would go onto this line and you would make something equal to lemon, like that. You would put fruits 5, since that is fruits 5. Someone typed it. That is correct. 5 would be the next item in the array after 4. You can just run that. Oh, you would also have to change this to a 6. Sorry, I didn't realize that. But yes. Thank you. 2 people realized it. Good job. You caught that for me. Thank you. So you would also have to say 6 up here, because otherwise you would get the error I just got. But other than that, you can keep adding as many things as you want, as long as you're changing this number here and you're adding it here. The for loop, it runs off of fruits.length. So because you're using fruits.length, it will automatically change whenever you add something new in here and whenever you change this number. So yeah, go ahead and try that out, adding fruits and things to your array, to your demo. We have two more demos to go through, I believe. Let's continue. So now we can move on to printing an entire array with a for each loop. So this does the same thing as the for loop. It does fundamentally the same thing, except we do it a different way. So this iterates through every element in the loop without relying on index. So this is a new kind of loop called a for each loop. And here's what it looks like. For int number array1, system.out.print number. So for each number in an array, you can print out the number. I'll send everyone the demo for this one. Well, let's make sure you fork it, but here it is. I'm just gonna fork that. Yeah, now wait a second, make sure everyone's ready for this full demo. So in this demo, we have a string of veggies this time, and this time they're all, the array is initiated, so it's created and all the elements are added on the same line. So this one's convenient because I don't have to change a number in here. I can just like comma and then add another item. And then it asks which vegetables do you sell, and then you have your little loop. So if you want to do a for each loop, you would need an array first of all to use this loop, and then inside your round brackets, you would first put the data type of your array. So we have a string up here, so you would put string down here, and then you would put a name that basically it would represent one item in your array. You can change that to whatever you want. It doesn't really matter. And then you would put a colon in the middle, and then you would put the name of your array. And then inside of your for loop, you can now use this like symbol to represent every item in your array to print it out. So if you run that, it will print everything out by going through each item. We can also try something else where we can have it print the length of each string. So this depends on how many letters there are. So this is just how you can see it, maybe a little more advanced, printing out more things. So you can use these for each loops pretty conveniently because they're a little simpler than a for loop. They're easier to understand. So you don't need to use index at all here. And if you want to add a new item, for this type of array declaration, you can just, type in, can't think of a vegetable for some reason right now, a tomato, like that. And it would do that. It would add it to the array, and then it would get printed out in our for each loop. So we only have one more demo left, I think, and it's all of them progressively get more complicated. So do ask any questions at any point if you have some. Our last concept is search. So it's called linear search. That doesn't really matter, but it's just the simplest way to search an array for an element. So if you want to find something in an array, this is the easiest way to do it. So in our example, we're using a for each loop. And first you declare your desired number. So if you want to find a specific number in the array, you go through every number in the array. If the number in the array is equal to the number you want, your desired number, you can print out that the number was found. This is the concept we're looking at in this demo. So I'll just send that in the chat. And make sure you fork before editing. And this one is a little more complex looking, but fundamentally it's pretty simple. So in this example of search, if you want to find something in an array, we're going to use input in this case, and then we have another string array called database, and all the things are listed here. So I have a bunch of countries. Let's see if the country you live in matches any of those in our database. No, you can just add that then if you want. So let's add Nigeria. So you can add as many countries as you want. And so then it'll ask you what country you live in. You get to type it in, type in the country, and then you enter a for loop. So in this case, we have to use a for loop because we want to print out the index that the country is found at. So because we want to know the exact index of its index number in the array, we have to use a for loop. So then inside the for loop, which goes up to the length of database, which is, I don't know what it is, it's pretty big. If database I, so a database country equals the country you typed in uppercase, print out, yay, your country exists in our database. It can be found at the index that you're at, and that would end the loop. So let's run that. Which country do you live in? And I'll put in Nigeria just for an example. And it's like, yay, your country exists in our database. And it's found at index 14. So Nigeria is the last thing in our array. Its index is 14. How many items are there in the array? Without counting. So if it's the last item in the list and its index is 14, how many items are there in the array? 15. Yes, I think that's correct. And then we can just double check. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 13, 14, 15, correct. So it's the last item and its index is 14. So the number of items in the list must be +1, 15. Also, someone asked, what does to uppercase mean? So dot to uppercase on a string just makes it all in uppercase. So the reason we use it in uppercase, so if you type in like Canada and it's in all lowercase, and you try to like see if it's equal to Canada here in all uppercase, that's not going to work. So it's so you can capitalize it however you want, and like it still works. That's the point of doing it to uppercase. Just puts everything in uppercase. Does that answer your question? Okay, good. Yeah. So this is a helpful way of trying to find an item in a database. You can add even more countries if you want. So let's get started on our quiz. I hope no one saw the answers, but anyway. So the first quiz question is, and feel free to put your answers in the chat. So the first question is, you can change the number of items in an array after initializing it, true or false. Okay, so you have a little bit of conflicted answers. Some people are saying true, they're saying false. Okay, let's take a look at the answer. So the answer is false. So you can't change the number of items in an array after initializing it. So I think I know why some of you, if you reinitialize, exactly. So you can't change it once the code is already running. So you can change it when you're editing the code itself. But when the code is already running, there is no way to add something to an array. You can only do that when you're editing the code. Like when I showed you changing the number from a 5 to a 6 or whatever, that's separate from this. There is no way in your code to change the number of an array. Like when the like, there's no line of code to do that. Does that make sense? It's only in the editing stages of your code where you can change how long your array is. Yeah. Yeah. So I understand why that might have been confusing to some of you. Only if you reinitialize, or if you edit your code, can you do that? Quiz question number 2. What number is printed with this code? So you have an array of numbers, 15, 0, 6, 21, 72, and then a print statement. What number is printed with this code? Okay, yeah. So let's take a look at the answer. And the answer is D, 21. Number 21 is printed because an array's index starts at 0. So number 15, if you want to get number 15, you would put 0. If you want to get 0, you would put 1. If you want to get 6, you would put 2. And if you want to get 21, you would put 3. So that's how this works. Are there any questions about that, about indexes? Because this can be a little confusing. But just remember that, try to remember at least, that it starts at 0 and goes up from there. All right, let's keep going. Question number 3. How do you get the length of an array? So you have 4 options here. Array.length as a method, array.length as a property, length array, and or you can't get the length of an array without iterating through it. So the answer is B. So when it comes to arrays, length is a property of an array, and it's accessed with dot property, so dot length. It might be confusing because with strings, it's A. So if you're trying to get the length of a string, you would go string.length with the curly brackets. But if you're trying to get the length of an array, it would be array.length and nothing else. So that can be, I mess that up pretty often. So it's okay if you can't remember that exactly, but there is a difference, a slight difference there between getting the length of an array and a string. So let's continue. Question 4. What is one correct way to initialize an array of string objects? And look at them carefully because they're kind of, some of them are a little tricky. Which is the correct way of initializing a string array? So the correct answer for question 4 is in fact C. So the correct formula for initializing an array with a fixed size, because that's what the options are, is type, so string, array name equals new type string, and then size. So one person put D. It's not D because D is missing 2 things. A, D needs to have string at the front before you put array, and then when you're putting the size, like number 5, it has to be square brackets and not curly brackets. So C is the correct answer. Have one more question, I believe. So quiz question number 5. What is the output of this code? And look at it carefully as well. I'll give you guys a little bit of time to analyze this one. Okay, so the correct answer for this one is B. The reason that it's B is because in the for loop, the third statement, instead of being I++ or I plus equals 1, it's I plus equals 2. So I increments by 2 each time instead of 1. So it would start out by printing 1 because that's index 0, of course. But then instead of I goes to 2, I goes to 1, I would skip that one, and it would go to 2. So it goes 0, 2 in terms of the value of I. And so the index 2 in this array is 3, so 1, 3, 5 instead of 1, 2, 3. That might be a little confusing, but it's okay if you didn't catch that, but when you're analyzing a for loop, it's important to see how much I changes. Yeah, very tricky. It's important to see how much I changes each time. So this time it changes by 2 instead of the normal 1. So you'd have to do a little bit of code tracing in your head to figure out exactly what would print in this circumstance. Someone said A, and the reason it's not A is because the loop starts at 0. I starts at 0, so you would print out the number 1 first anyway, and then it would continue from there. Yeah, so this is a tricky question. I'm very glad that everyone tried their best anyway. That's always good to see. So that is it for our lesson though. Now it's time for questions, feedback form, and the workshop as well, of course. So I'm just going to open up our workshop. You can do your feedback form now, or you can do your feedback form at the end of the lesson, but that is really appreciated in terms of lessons and things. I can just quickly send the feedback form. I'll just have that one in the chat now, and then also give you the resources links will come pretty soon, but I'll just send the workshop link. This is such a cute slide. Workshop link is this one. Make sure you fork and the submission form link is this one. Yeah. Okay. Ooh. Let's fork this. And there we go. Okay. Yeah, and there's also a bunch of resources in the chat. So today's workshop is this. So you finally managed to sneak into one of the ice cream stores. This is, I guess, a continuation of the plotline of you've received a top secret lead saying that each ice cream tub is actually a tunnel leading to a secret room where they could be keeping your friend. Let's try the one with your friend's favorite ice cream flavor in it. What is your friend's favorite ice cream flavor? Okay, go on. And the important part is going to be the loop at the very bottom here. But up until then, I'll help everyone out with this workshop. So let's import something we can use to collect user input. So we've done this quite a few times. I think all of our workshops like to use input. So we can just start with import java.util.scanner to get our user input. And then does anyone remember how to create the user input object, the object that we need to create user input? It starts with scanner, and we can name it something. Doesn't really matter what. Equals new scanner, like that. And then inside of the brackets, system.in. And that will create your scanner objects. You can create user input. And then down here, let's create a variable to store the user's input. So it already gives you the variable called flavor right here. So if you want to get user input and put it in flavor, does anyone know what you would have to type after the equal sign? Keeping in mind that our scanner object is named scan at the top. Yeah, feel free to put your answers in chat. I know it can be a little nerve-wracking, but yes, someone said it, next line. So scan is the name of our object, so scan, next line. Good job, Caitlin. scan.next line, and that will store the user's input. And now there's an array created for you. So it says, now we have to create the array of all the different ice cream flavors in the store. Let's make them uppercase so we can easily match the user's input. So yeah, a good tip for something like this, trying to find something in an array, is making all of the things in the array have the same case. So they're all uppercase in this case. You could also make them all lowercase, just so that it's easier to match the user input to them. And if you have any other ice cream flavors, feel free to add them to the array. So I really like cheesecake flavor ice cream, which is kind of a wild card, but there's some really good flavors. And I also like coconut, so I want to put those in there because I really like those. And then the last part, the for loop and like the search, I'm gonna leave up to you guys to try and figure it out. If you want to put your code in the chat or leave your answers so I can see them, you can also do that. But now you're supposed to go through all the flavors and see if any of them match your friend's favorite. If you find a match, print out the index you found it at as well. So you have a bunch of little tips here about how to write the for loop and how to conduct the search. But this part I think it's a good idea if you try it out on your own. And if you need any help with your code though, and if you have any other questions, this is a good time to ask. You can also ask me like privately, like send me a private DM on Zoom. You can do that. But yeah, that is pretty much everything for today's lesson. I guess it's technically a little bit early because like 7 minutes technically left, but that is really all we had to go through. So we went over arrays, getting items in an array, printing arrays, searching in arrays. Yeah, lots of array stuff. Yeah, of course. Before you go, you can please fill out the feedback form, which I'm going to send one more time. Really helpful. But yeah, that's pretty much all for today. You can stay if you have questions or need help. But thank you for coming. Have a great day, everyone. I think I'm not 100% sure what our next lesson is. It might be classes, it might be array lists. But yeah, thank you everyone for coming. Hope you learned something. I hope you work on your workshop at home. Bye.